Hi guys, welcome to this new video of useEffect in React, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of different variations and mistakes that you might be doing while using useEffect hook in your React applications. UseEffect hook is used in almost every application, and it's going to be very important video, and I would request you guys to stay focused and watch the video till end. So I have created this empty React project, and on the left side I have opened up Chrome browser to see the output of different variations of useEffect hook. So first of all, I am in the app default component of React, and first of all I'll be creating an empty state, and for that I will be writing value. So it should be const value set value, and then I will be using use state hook of React. Okay, so use state hook of React, we can import it from the use state from React. Okay, and the reason I've imported this use state is that because use state have a good bonding and good relationship with the use effect hook, and it has quite effect on the use effect, and different variations can be testing while creating these variables. So then I will be actually, first let's try to log something, hello. Okay, and I will rerun, and you can see that this hello is printed on the console window, right? So if I refresh the page, this hello will be printed on this window, right? And now I will be moving this console log inside a use effect hook. So use effect, and then I'll be writing it like this, console dot, and then the value. All right, and I will save it and refresh, and now you can see that the value is printed two times. It is the default behavior of React that the first, whenever the component renders or mount, then the use effect, whether it's the one use effect or a multiple use effect in a component, it triggers two times. Okay, so it's the default behavior. At the end of this video I will let you know that why is it happening in React, and why it should happen actually. So this is a basic version of use effect hook. So whenever a component loads, this use effect will trigger, and whatever the code written inside it, whether it's an API call, it's any call to services, sockets, will be triggered from here, right? So now the reason I included this use state is to add some value to it and change the value using this set value function. So here first I will be printing this value, and then I'll be creating a button, and in this button I will be writing on click, and on click, after that I will be writing set value pre plus 1. Okay, and then I will give it a name increment. Okay, and let's refresh, and now you can see that there is this 0 shown up, and there is a button increment, and if I click on it, you will see that it will be incremented by 1, and this is what I'm printing over here. And this use effect, I'm printing the log value over here, and check out the console window. You will see that this console log is being printed every time when I will be clicking on this increment button. Okay, so it means that this use effect without any dependency array or an empty array will be triggered at the start of component mounting, and every time whenever any of the state variable within that component is changed, right? Even if we have another state variable, let's say that I'm going to create another state variable, let's say value 2, set value 2, and I'm going to copy this value 2, and I'm going to give it decrement name. and previous equals to -1 and set value 2. So let's save it and refresh. You can see that the first value is printed. This is the value it got printed, and it prints two times. Now if I click on the increment, you will see that this value is printed. If I click on increment, this value is again printed, and if I click on the decrement, you can see it becomes 3. So this use effect is being triggered every time any of the state variable is getting triggered. So if we want to trigger something or run any code that we want to trigger on every change of variable of the state, then we need to write the code inside an empty use effect. Empty means we are not passing any second argument to this use effect function. Okay, so now let's talk about another variation. I'm going to write an empty array over here. Okay, and I'm going to give it a name, uh, empty array. Okay, and this one I'm going to give it empty. Okay, so we can see that what's happening over here. So I have saved this file. I'm going to refresh, and now you can see that since our component is mounted, and all of the use effects that we will be writing in this file will be executed two times by default. Okay, the first one this in the sequence, and it will trigger again in the sequence. So empty, empty array, empty, empty array, right? And now let's see what happens if we try to change these state variables. Increment, and you can see that only this triggers. This is empty. And if I click increment, it will trigger again. And if I click decrement, you can see that even if I click increment or decrement, I'm changing the values of both of these states. Only this use effect is working. So it means that if we pass the second argument with an empty array, it will only be triggered whenever the component loads. It will not trigger after that. And if we want something to happen, some execution of the code only once and not happened every time this component's remounted, then we need to write the code inside it. Okay, so now let's talk about another variation. We are going to have some kind of dependencies inside it. So I'm going to pass some kind of dependency, a value, and then I'm going to add another use effect with the value 2. Okay, so this value is this, and this value 2 is this state variable. Okay, and I'm going to give it a value, and the second one is the value 2. So let's save it, and I'm going to refresh. And now you can see that all these four use effects executed two times in sequence. So now let's see what happens. If I click on the increment, you will see that first the empty triggered because it's the first use effect and this is what we expected. And the second one is the value triggered, this one. Okay, and this is because that we have added this dependency variable name. It means that it will, every time this use effect will be triggered whenever this value is going to get changed. Okay, so this is being changed with the increment of 1, and it is detecting that this value is getting changed, so this code inside this use effect is getting executed. So every time I click on the increment, you can see the console window that it is printing this was printing earlier, as we know, and this is printing again and again because the value of this value variable is getting changed. Okay, and if I refresh, and now if I click on the decrement, you can see that the empty is printed because there is no any dependency array inside it, and then the value 2 is printed because this, using this button, we are actually making changes to this variable value 2. Okay, so that's why it is getting printed, right? So, and refresh, decrement, 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 every time I'm going to click it, it's going to re-trigger because the value 2 is getting changed. Okay, and now I'm going to talk about very important concept is called the primitive types and non-primitive types. And this particular integer variable, you can see that 0 is an integer, 0 is an integer. It's a primitive type. And if I try to change it something like 1 over here on the decrement variable, let's see what happens. I'm going to save this file. Let's refresh. Currently, the value 2 is 0. Okay. And when I click on this decrement button, it's going to change its value to 1. And as expected, if I click on the decrement, it will print first empty and then this console value 2, because the value 2 value has been changed inside it. It becomes 1, which is different than 0. Okay. And now if I click decrement again, and you will see that it is not getting printed over here because the previous value is 1 and the new value is again 1, and it will only get triggered whenever this value 2 is going to get changed. Okay. And here I'm adding 1 with on the previous value, and this new value is getting set using this function. That's why this is getting printed, this use effect is getting printed. Okay. So let me talk about multiple dependency arrays, then I will let you know that why it is happening, what are primitive types, what are non-primitive types, and how we can tackle these problems. So first of all, let me create another use effect, and I'm going to pass value 1. It's not value 1, it's only value. And I'm going to just for reference value and value 2. Okay. And if I refresh, uh, let's see what happens. So what I think, first this will be logged, and then if I change the value, this will be logged and this will be logged. Okay. So let's see, if I click on increment, you can see that the empty logged, value logged, and value 2 is printed in my console window. The reason is that this is the dependency array. It means that if any of these two variables gets changed, means the value inside these variables gets changed, then run this use effect function, whatever is written inside it. So we can add as much dependency variables as we want. There is an or operator inside it. Okay. If all of these values are false or not changed, then there is a chance that the use effect of this will not work, right? So this is about the basics of the use effects. Let's move towards some advanced stuff so you can understand and utilize the use effect better in your projects. Okay, so now I'm going to remove everything I've just explored. I don't want this file to get longer. I just this to want to elaborate every concept to you. Okay, so I have just removed this, and let me remove this one as well. Okay, so the reason I was talking about the primitive types and non-primitive types is that I want to explain you about integer variables, string variables. So if I write in the console like 1 equals to 1, you will see it is printed 2. Now if I talk about array, let's say 1, 2 equals to 1 and 2, you will see that it is false even though the values of this array is equal to each other. So the arrays and objects are non-primitive types in JavaScript. So means that these integers, strings and booleans are the primitive types, means that the if the values are same, then it's going to share the same memory location in your RAM. And in the form of array and objects, even if the values are same, even then it's going to allocate a different memory blocks in your RAM. That's why it's going to show the false, right? So if we want to make it true, we need to store the reference of the memory blocks of your RAM to another variable, then it will become true. Okay, that's another topic. So now I'm going to create a new variable. So I'm going to give it a name like count, and the set count and equals to use state, and then inside it I'm going to give it value 0. This is an object, remember, and we can give any number of key value pairs to this object. We can have arrays of objects and hundred of properties to it, right? And now let's come down, and I'm going to add its dependency. So count is the dependency, okay? And I'm going to make some changes to it. Let's save it so that it becomes like this. So I'm going to use count. So it's actually not count, it's count dot value. Okay, now you can see it's 0, and now I will be changing this value using this on click function. So set count, and inside it we cannot actually make changes like this, like we do in the integer form. So to actually make this happen, we will be using pre and then like this parentheses, we will write three dots, it's called spread operator, and then we are going to give value and then pre dot val plus 1. Okay, so it's showing some kind of warning. It's the warning that we have assigned. It's about this. So I'm just going to remove this thing. Okay, and it will not show this warning. And count this. Now, if I click on the count, you will see that this one will be printed. If I click on the count, it will become 2, 3, 4, 5, and every time I'm clicking on it, this use effect is getting triggered. So means that we are making changes to this count variable, and earlier the value was 1 to 0 and it's keep on changing. So you might be thinking that its value is getting changed. That's why it's showing and being printed over here, means that this use effect is getting triggered. Okay, now let's try to keep the value same. It was 0. Let's try to keep the value just 1. Okay, so first time it will be triggered. So count 0, and if I click count, you can see the use effect has been triggered again. That's why this empty is printed. I need to add some count here so you have better understanding. So click count and count is printed, and now this has been 1 and the new value is 1 as well. If I click on the count, imagine what happens. So if I click on count, this value is not getting changed, but this use effect is getting triggered again, even though this value is showing same. But again, as I showed you that its value is same, but its memory location is getting changed again and again, because it's the non-primitive type, and it happens with array as well. Okay, so if you have called an API and let's say a student object, and the data is too much, and if even if you are not updating the data with the new one, this use effect will keep on triggering and it will affect the performance. And in React, in order you to tackle this situation, we can have a multiple ways to it. We can have other hooks of React like use ref, or we can use the use memo hook as well. So let's utilize the use memo hook to avoid this problem. So if the value gets changed actually, then we want to make this use effect executed. Okay, so now let's use memo. Use memo is used to memorize the content of any variable, whether it's an array, object, or even integers. Okay, so now use memo, this is the hook from React, and we can have this function parentheses and this, and in this memo we can actually store the value count.val. Okay, and then we can have its dependency is that count.val, right? So still it will not work. It's an object, we don't need to add semicolon. So this dependency array means that this is a val 0. If we have another key value pair after that, okay, then it will not be memorizing this val2 because we have not added it in the dependency array. So this use memo will only memorize the values of only keys which we add in this dependency array. Okay, and if there is a student object that have 10 keys like the id, student name, phone number, address, class, subjects, then the values that we want to remember should be added in this dependency array. Okay, so let's remove this for now, and it will not still not work. What we need to do is we need to tell this use effect that don't remember this count but remember this use memo. Okay, so we need to store this its reference in a variable. So ref equals to, and here I'll be writing ref. Okay, and now let's save it. Let's refresh. And now if I hit count, you can see that the 0 was different than 1. Now the value is 1. Now I am updating this value with again. Now let's see if this count printed again or not, because it's in use effect. If I click count, click, and it's not working, and we have optimized our code. And if the value is going to get changed, then it's going to gets triggered this use effect. Okay, so it's very important that you understand these important concepts of use effect. We are not yet done. We need to talk about few more concepts of use effect. So let's say that we have to call an api, or we want to run set timeout or set interval in our code. Okay, so I'm going to add, you can say, a new variable. So I'm going to give timer, set timer, and then use state. And in here, I'm going to give 0, right? Let's copy this use effect, and I'm going to remove everything from this, and let's try to use set interval inside it. Okay, and I'm going to run this set interval after every 1 second. Okay, so let's first try to see what gets printed. Pause. Let me add this timer over here so you can see in bigger screen. And inside it, I'm going to make changes into the variable that I've created above. So set timer prev, prev plus 1. Okay, so let's see what happens if I save it and refresh. You can see that this is working, but there is a problem with what's going on here. Okay, it might break down and hang my browser, so we should avoid that, and I'm just going to close it for now. Okay, and I'm going to make some changes to it. So the problem here is that first of all, whenever this component loads, this use effect is going to load, and every time this state variable is getting changed, this set interval instance is reinitialized. Okay, so the previous instance keeps on running and the new instance gets created. So then all the new instances of set interval are getting overlapped, and that's why you just saw some problems in it. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to return a function. and that function is called a cleanup function in useEffect hook. So what we need to do, we need to return, and here we need to give the clear interval and then the ID of this set interval. So const ID equals to this, and I'm going to give the ID. Okay, so I'm going to save it. Now, if I run my server localhost 3000, hmm, hmm, hmm. Here you can see that the timer is working fine now and there is no problem, and it's not missing any integer between. Okay, the reason is that whenever we cancel the interval ID, it actually does not let the previous instance of the set interval to keep working. It whenever the state variables gets changed, this use effect it's going to get triggered, and the previous instance of the set interval is going to get returned. This return function means that whenever these components get unmounted, means when we go out of this component or any state variable gets changed or a component gets re-triggered, then this return function will get triggered. Okay, so first this code will trigger and the return function will trigger, and whenever after this, whenever this state variable is going to get changed, then first this cleanup function is going to trigger, then the code above in the use effect is going to trigger. So remember these points, it's going to be beneficial in order to optimize your code, right? So now if we want to optimize it more, I would suggest you to add some kind of dependency array, and I'm going to add the same timer dependency. Okay, so I'm going to refresh and it's going to work as is as before, and whenever this is going to get changed, this is going to call the cleanup function, and this is how you can set up. And this return cleanup function is not only for clearing set interval or set timeout. You can call APIs, you can make some more changes, set the variable in local storage, session storage. So remember that this function in every use effect gets triggered whenever component remounted or unmounted using when we navigate from other page to a new page, or whenever any state variable gets changed, then this cleanup function is going to get triggered, right? So next we are going to talk about using API calls in the use effect, and let's move towards that. So now let's call some APIs inside the use effect, and I have actually created this new state variable posts, and it has a function set posts, and I'm going to be calling an API for the JSON placeholder, which is the public API, and I will be calling some posts inside it. Okay, so first of all, I need to use some kind of built-in API calling function. I can use Axios or a built-in JavaScript fetch function. Okay, so let's try to call the fetch, and HTTPS, which is JSON placeholder dot type code dot com slash posts. Okay, so this is the API. Let me try to run it on the browser and show you what it prints. So these are all the posts. I think there are 100 posts over here, and we are going to call this API. So after this, it gives us a then function, and in the then we can get the response, and then we need to convert this response into the JSON, and then this is going to give us the data. Okay, and inside it I can actually update this variable using this set posts function. So set posts data. Okay, So now let's try to come in our HTML and try to print this data. So first I'm going to check if posts exist, then posts.map post, and then I can get the key first. So post.id is the key, and then I can, rather than printing everything inside the post, let's try to print the title. So post.title. Okay. So let's refresh, and let's refresh the browser, and I should be actually getting the data. So for elaboration and the problem that we can face in calling an API is that I have actually gone to the network tab, network, and I have slowed down this connection from no throttling to slow 3G. Okay. The reason I've done it because I want to elaborate you one problem while using useEffect and calling an API, which we will try to resolve. Okay. So now let's go to the console, and I'm just waiting for this to print the list of posts. Let me see if the logic is fine. So we have this posts, and then the posts dot map, and then we have this post.id. Okay, actually this is not a curly braces, it should be parentheses, and this is a mistake I do quite a lot. Let's refresh the page after saving this file. Now the network is slow, and depending upon the data, it will take some time and it will show the titles of all the posts over here. All right, so we can see the titles of all these posts which is returning from this API. Okay, so you can analyze that whenever the internet was slow, in that case, during the process of fetching the data, if I navigate from this page to another page, or if I click on a link, or by mistake I navigate from, I close this browser, okay, this tab or something like that, then it will keep calling and returning the data, right? Because I have not stopped this fetch function and the API call to get and update this state. Okay, so this is where our cleanup function comes in. Cleanup function means that whenever this component gets unmounted, unmounted means that whenever we navigate to another page or refresh the same page, or this state might get changed, should not be calling this API and updating this state because our component is unmounted, right? So let's try to avoid this problem. Let's try to write a cleanup function, and inside it I'm going to check that if my component is unmounted, then I should not reset the state of this variable. Okay, so to make this logic happen, I can create a variable is fetched equals to first it's not fetched. Okay, copy, and then here I can check if it is not fetched, then you need to set the data. Okay, and if the component is unmounted means while it is fetching the data and we have navigated to another page, or we have changed the kind of API over here. Let's say if we are having an ID over here slash ID, and we keep on changing the ID again and again, and the component will be remounted, then we need to stop this fetch request to set the state, and inside it I will be is fetched equals to true. Okay, so what will happen is when it's calling an API, let's save it. And if I refresh, so it's currently calling this API, and I'm waiting for this because internet is slower, and I have navigated to another page. Then it's going to trigger this return call function, and it's going to make it false. When it will become false, then it will go to this then it will, if it comes in this, then it will become false, because not true is equal to false, then it will not update the state, right? So this is how we can make our API calls inside the use effect hook more optimized. So whenever you call an API in your React component or even the next component, then I would request you guys to actually use this cleanup function to actually make sure that you avoid setting up states inside this fetch function. There are some advanced topics that provided by fetch function, that we can even stop this fetch request even if it is called and sent to the server. Okay, but that I will discuss in the next video. And in that case, we don't even have to add the check over here, that if its variable is added or not, then it needs to set the state. But it will simply cancel the fetch request even if we are using Axios package, or even if the fetch package. I will show you the separate ways and two ways of these to actually cancel this fetch request, and that is quite important for the good performance of your applications. Till now, I hope that you have liked my video, and you have understood all the concepts of use effect, and you will be writing an optimized version of use effect hook in your application from now on. So don't forget to subscribe my channel. Do follow me for upcoming videos on latest technologies as well. So make sure you subscribe my channel, hit the like button. Thank you so much for watching.